Hello, I'm Meshal Malik, and you are watching Indus Special. People all around the world are reverting back to the age-old practice of organic farming. These days, there is much talk about the dedication towards a healthier lifestyle. But how different is organic farming from conventional farming? And is it really as good as it sounds? Let's discuss this further with our guests. We're joined with Dr. Meshal Malik, who's a dietitian and she heads her own fitness initiative. Nida Khan, who's an entrepreneur. Qasim Khan, who's an entrepreneur farmer. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. Qasim, let's go to you first. So what do you think is the reason for why people want to revert back to organic farming?
I think all around the world, not just Pakistan, but we are in a health crisis. And you have a very large increase of diet-related health issues, especially in the last 20 to 30 years or post the green revolution, where you had an increase of yields very rapidly of all of our grains and a lot of our other agricultural produce.
Dr. Meshal, do you agree that we're in a health crisis right now?
Yes, we've been in a health crisis for almost about 2 decades now, and that too, there's a dire need of not just catering to the health environment, but also to looking after the real environment that we are living in. And because we hear a lot about the greenhouse effect, we hear a lot about the ozone layer, we hear a lot about the environmental pollution. So all of these actually contribute to a person's personal health, emotional well-being, that as well. So I think that in the long run, it's not just the health per se, but it's an all-encompassing thing that would affect your mood, that would affect your general health, your fitness, your well-being, emotionally, and mind, body, spirit.
So we are in a health crisis.
Yep, totally.
Nida, so a lot of people suggest that organic farming is the way to go. Bringing in organic foods would perhaps curb this health crisis. Do you agree with that?
Of course. This is not like conventional farming should be banned.
That's a very strong statement.
It should be, because you cannot keep eating vegetables filled with pesticides and such strong pesticides and fertilizers that are really not suitable for a human body, and you cannot keep defending it anymore, because see, the thing is,
Before we get to that, Nida, could you just explain what do you see as being the difference between organic farming and conventional farming?
So organic farming is basically without any pesticides or fertilizers or anything of that sort. You have to create an environment in which, a vegetable or fruit or even meat, they have to be in the kind of environment they need for them to grow accordingly. You cannot grow a chicken in 20 days, filled with antibiotics and filled with all kinds of, bad stuff, and then expect your body to not react to it. Same goes for vegetables, same goes for fruits. So whatever you take in is kind of a medicine. Food itself is medicine. You do not need medicine if you're eating right, And, I think our mission basically should be to correct our eating habits rather than, using and going to doctors every now and then. I think it's very important, especially for the kids.
So do you think
days.
organic farming is a lifestyle choice and eating organic foods is a lifestyle choice, or in this day and age it's something that's almost as if a necessity?
It is a necessity. And I would, on this platform, I would like everyone to know, and I would just want them to research about it and make a decision on your own. I mean, if I talk about myself, I wasn't the person that I am right now. But certain things that have happened during the course of my life, I have actually found out that whatever I eat basically affects my body.
So you are what you
my
eat.
My mood, yeah, exactly.
Qasim, so Nida here says that organic farming does not use pesticides, but research also shows that that might be a myth. What do you have to say about that?
So pesticide is again, it's generally referred to as a chemical-based pest killer. Now, in organic farming, you have pest repellents that are made and ingredients that a lot of organic farmers use. But I think again, it's important to point out the approach, the mentality, and the thought process behind organic sustainable farming. A lot of we need a holistic approach, not just to what we are growing, but the entire environment and the entire biodiversity of the farm. So very important to, I think, also not think of insects as pests, but rather an important part of a very sophisticated and fragile ecosystem that we need to not interfere with or not damage, because to be able to repair these fragile ecosystems is very hard. And once an ecosystem is broken and destroyed, it is near impossible, I think, for humans to be able to repair them or bring them back to their original shape and form.
So Qasim,
very important.
You mentioned sustainable organic farming. How is organic farming more sustainable?
It's more sustainable because you are, you've got a much higher regard for your natural resources. Sustainable farming is not just taking chemicals into account, it is taking in water into account, it is taking soil into account, it is taking labor, it is taking the social and cultural impacts of agricultural farming practices all in mind. I think once you are following or have this holistic approach, you are much closer to what organic and sustainable farming requires from a farmer or from a food producer.
Dr. Farzeen, in your expert opinion, do you see for there to be a change in the health of people who do consume more organic products as compared to those who consume products from a conventional farming?
Definitely, most definitely, because Mishal, nowadays the slogan is going by nature. So if you go by nature, and most of the time you must have heard about all the diets that are in the going with the program, which is mostly like the Stone Age diet, mostly like the raw vegetable diet, raw fruit diet sort of a scene. So that means that we should, the more in touch we are with nature in its natural form, that means that we are walking on the path of health and fitness. Now, like everyone said, all the experts over here, it's not just the fruit itself which comes out. A lot of people are saying that a certain thing is organic while it's not. Because there are certain definitions and there's a prerequisite to do organic farming. For instance, I think Qasim Khan would be able to correct me if I'm wrong, that there's a treatment of the soil for 3 years that it doesn't have to have any pesticide, it doesn't have to have any chemical fertilizer.
That seems like a very long, drawn-out process.
Yes. So it's treating the soil so that your fruit nurtures itself in a very natural environment. Number 2, all the pesticides that are being used are not just harming your vegetable or your fruit. It's also harming in the sense that there's a lot of germ resistance, a lot of drug resistance as well.
Dr. Farzeen, just on that point, pesticides, are they actually harmful to our health? Because there are conflicting reports, conflicting studies that do say that they might not be so. And this is just, people who walk under the banner of organic living say that, yes, they are very harmful, but powerful fertilizing companies state that, no, that's not the case.
Mishal, when we come to the word chemical, it usually raises that suspicion. So most of them have a lot of chemicals, they have a lot of hormones, they have a lot of chemicals which are not good, not just for the body, but like I was saying, they do produce a lot of resistance in the weeds. They put a resistance in the bacteria and the fungi, which are actually causing the fruit and everything to rot. So a lot of drug resistance cropping up. What I would say is that organic, or just having maybe starting off with, there was this forum that I was talking on, and we were talking about kitchen gardens. So people who can't really, have big areas to nurture for their home or to cater for their home, they can have kitchen gardens. And the idea of kitchen garden as organic farming, having your, your carrots and your radishes and stuff like that is, I think it's pretty groovy.
So, Nida, Dr. Farzeen says that you can start your own kitchen gardens, but is organic farming that easy?
It is actually. If you try, see, the thing is, if you are growing something, and I completely agree with her, because kitchen gardens is actually the way to go these days, because you are growing it yourself, so you know what's happening. And also, when you are growing it in a small area, it's easier for you to manage it and see what's going, in your kitchen. A lot of people are doing it now, even in Pakistan. And I think there are a lot of countries who have adopted this thing. And I think it's a great thing. And if our actually the Punjab Food Authority actually had an entire this whole assignment where they had put up banners regarding kitchen gardening and how to promote it. They had done it I think last year maybe. Yeah.
So Qasim, over here the discussion we're having is that kitchen gardening, other easy ways we can involve ourselves in are actually organic farming. But then the question arises, why are products that are organically produced so very expensive?
It's an economic question, so it has an economic answer. It's right now demand is a lot higher than supply of organic food, and an organic farmer is sacrificing a lot of his yield to be able to produce in less quantity organically of a higher quality. So where a conventional farmer might, for an example, might be producing 100 mons of tomatoes on a certain piece of land, an organic farmer on that same piece of land or that same size of land through organic practices will not even be able to produce half of what the conventional farmer has produced. So in order for it to be economically sustainable, organic farmers need to be able to price their food differently from conventional food.
Then they make sure that their products are very, very exclusive. They're only accessible to only very specific people who can afford them.
Initially, yes, but in the long term, no. Because if you look at other countries where organic has become the majority or has a substantial amount of market share, you will see the price in those markets to be lower or comparable to conventional agricultural products. Also, I think it is a bit of a generalization to say organic products are more expensive than conventional. Some cases, I know that a lot of times when I'm growing vegetables and selling vegetables at farmers markets and through home deliveries, our prices are very competitive, if not the same to conventional agricultural products, and in some cases less.
Dr. Farzeen, all the products that we see in the supermarket, are they somehow deceiving the consumers into labeling them as being very healthy, but they're not actually? Because there is this misconception that, for example, if I sell juice in a recycled bottle, it will be healthy, whereas the content might not be.
Yes, yes, in certain cases, I would say, yes, it is a bit deceptive sometimes that you walk into a supermarket and these banners of health and nutrition and fitness, and sometimes it's not the case, but sometimes it is. So we can't really put the finger on it and say, well, all of them are doing it.
I think it's about research as well. You have to have a certain research on your own. You have to do it. How can you go and just buy whatever it says?
But people don't have the time these days to do research thoroughly. Doesn't the onus lie with the producers to make sure that their labels are informative to the consumers?
Yes, that's very important.
Well, you can also, of course it is. And I also wanted to point out one thing. The price of the organic things is that it's higher than the normal stuff that you find in the markets. I think it's kind of a myth. You're paying especially you're paying for what you're getting, and also
So prices aren't higher?
I'm saying in some ways they are, somewhere of course, because you have, it's organic, and we've discussed how it's produced, but in some cases it isn't. I myself, I've been to farmers markets and I've bought stuff, and sometimes it's lesser than what I get in the normal market. So I think we need to just end this debate about how expensive this is, because you really need to have research, and you have to go and see the price range. It's really not that much.
So Nida says we should end this debate, but today we're not going to. We're going to continue it after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Indus Special. We're discussing organic farming. So Qasim, do you agree that organic farming depends and varies from region to region and country to country?
Farming anywhere, even conventional farming, varies a lot because you are highly dependent on your natural resources and geography. So, what is happening in a country in the southern hemisphere the conditions will be very different from a country in the northern hemisphere. A country that is arid as opposed to a country that is, has lots of rivers or has lots of rainfall. So there's a lot of variety and there's a lot of diversity, and that is something that the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations is very good at doing a lot of research about and trying to come up with practices that can be applied to a variety of environments and a variety of countries. But very important for those practices to be localized before they are implemented.
So
also very important for...
We're joined with Dr. Masood Butt, who's the Dean of the Department of Food and Nutrition in the University of Agriculture, Faisalabad. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
So, Dr. Masood, how much of there is a need for localized research in regards to food farming practices?
Actually, there's a wide diversity in various regions. So I think this is one of the factors. There is some difference in the environmental factors also. But I think there are particularly special reference to food and vegetable and crops. The things are more or less equal. For example, in case of crops, if we have to prepare the organic farming, then definitely we have to skip the fertilizer. We are not using pesticides, insecticides, something like that, and we are not using any fertilizers even. So the things are almost common, but it varies from, of course, from environment to environment and the diversity of the crops.
Dr. Masood, so the United States has the United States Department of Agriculture who does extensive research in trying to detect the level of pesticides present in food, whether they are organic or produced from conventional means. What do we have here in Pakistan that replicates that format, replicates the amount of research that can be done?
Madam, you see that we have to adopt the GAP, that is called as Good Agriculture Practices. And secondly, with special reference to pesticide here in Pakistan, there is indiscriminate use of pesticides. And and the pesticide residue left in the crops. But in case of organic farming, we have to avoid these pesticides. But definitely we do need
Dr. Masood, so what are the government regulations in terms of a higher threshold of using pesticides, a higher limit? Is there any such limit?
You see that there are, of course, some standards, when particularly there are some quarantine base when we are exporting the items. At that time, there are some certain limits of the pesticide residues, as well as about aflatoxins and the heavy metals. And this is one of the reasons that we are not good exporters of fruits and vegetables and even the crops, because of the indiscriminate, the high pesticide residues, as well as the presence of, we are not meeting the standard of aflatoxins as well as the heavy metals, the stuff like that. So definitely we do need we have to follow the legislation and which are implemented in the international scenario.
Nida, what do you think about the legislative part of this? Are there enough laws to regulate the production of food and to make sure that it's at a healthy level, the pesticides that are used?
I will just say that the food authority or the government should at least ensure, and we should be able to differentiate between what's organic and what's not. Today in the market, anyone right now can sell anything saying it's organic. But I mean, the food authorities, they do have certain obligations. You have to get your product tested and they have to pass it. But generally for organic farming or organic stuff being sold in the market, there isn't any such section or any such sector within the food authority that's present. So when we get a license, we are a licensed organization, a company, but we get a license under the Punjab Food Authority, not under any organic certification.
So lack of certifications.
Lack of actually everything, lack of a certain sector that tells you that certifies an organic company to be organic, to have the tests done, and I also feel like there's a lack of understanding within a sector for the organic stuff. I think understanding is also very important.
In your professional advice, what would you tell consumers? What should they look out for if the government and food authorities aren't playing their role? What should they look out for when they're going shopping, buying food?
Well, it's basically the ingredients. They got to read the ingredients on a certain package. And before, when we were talking about, I was giving the answer to your previous question, we were discussing the fact that the ingredients need to be on every product so that we know that where it's coming from, at least, some know-how. And the vegetables have to be fresh. They like the sort of vegetables that are coming from the other sort of farming is just the same shape, the same size. But in organic farming, let's say there's one feature which I tell my clients is that, every vegetable is going to look different, not so perfect. And it's not just about vegetables and fruits, it's also about the dairy, it's also about the meat. It has to be grass-fed. And when we talk about grass-fed meat, it means that it should not have any hormones, no growth hormones, no antibiotics in its system. We are also talking about the milk, the dairy that we are getting out of these products. So usually I ask my clients to go for a fresher source wherever they can, muster it up from. But I must say that there is not such a, there's a dearth of organic food markets actually in and around.
When it comes to consumer awareness, I'd like to go back to that point that you mentioned, they must read the ingredients. Most of the ingredients seem to be very technical. What are those specific ingredients that they should look out for and not touch those products that have those?
Well, actually, it's usually the name of pesticides, which are now coming in coded forms as well. And like we were discussing before, that a certain amount of research has to go into what you're eating. I mean, when you go to the market and you have to buy a certain sort of clothes for you, you match your shoes, you match your laces, you match your buttons. How about just reading up on what you're eating? So we need to find out the code names of certain things that shouldn't be there.
There's some apps now too that have been developed that can scan, I believe, ingredients.
Yes, you could resort to apps, or you could just do the reading yourself. Yeah.
So and I also think that the government should play a role in basically making the consumer aware of what they're getting. Their regulations do include that the product should have ingredients on it, the product should be tested and all that. But when you're buying organic, when you're selling organic, there is no such awareness within the government that actually, when the government doesn't have that, the food authority doesn't have that much awareness, then they won't be able to, make the consumer aware. So I feel like it has a lot to do with the awareness, and the government can play a huge role in making the consumer.
We're in a health crisis.
The food authority is doing a great job when it comes to the general health codes. But there is no such thing as you can call organic products certification, or even like there is no such awareness as well within that sector. So I think
Is this the same case globally?
No, there are certain certifications that
So the government's playing their role, and the
Yes.
consumers, it makes it easier for the consumers
Yes,
as well.
of course.
Qasim, I'll take this question to you. So there is a technical process involved in cleansing the land. Can you tell us a little more about that before people go towards organic farming?
If we're talking about a farm that was practicing conventional agriculture and conventional farming, and depending again on how much pesticide and chemical fertilizer they were using, and what their water source is, and how they're irrigating the farm, then the sort of cleansing period for the soil depends on that. So yes, it can be 3 years, it can be 2 years, it can be even more, it can be double of that, depending again on the soil condition. So I would always recommend for anybody who wanted to do organic farming, whether it's at home, whether it's on your farm, whether it's you're getting soil in matkas or in pots, in gamlas, and putting them on your window, always just test the soil. It's a very simple soil test that you can do. It doesn't cost a lot of money.
So before we were talking about what the land situation is in terms of producing organically, can you tell us about the condition in Pakistan? How much agricultural land is dedicated towards producing products in an organic manner?
Madam, I just want to share, before that, I just want to share that organic farming doesn't mean that it is just the vegetable or the fruits, but there is a tremendous scope. There is organic meat also and organic milk also. But the thing is that in Pakistan it is not so much popular, but some of the corporate farmers have started up their business in Multan, in Mamukhanj and something like that. Even in Faisalabad, peri-urban regions, they are starting the business of organic farming, like organic wheat. There is availability, organic vegetables are available. But you see the prices are a bit expensive. They are a bit expensive in the market. So
why do you think the reason for the prices being expensive is?
The yield, because we are not using fertilizers, we are not using pesticides, stuff like that. So I mean the yield is not so much high as compared to the other inorganic crops. So that's why it's a bit expensive, and the basic and because of this yield. So on overall, secondly, there is a small number of people are doing in this business. So there is the resource, they don't, the corporate farmers having resources, but small farmers don't have access towards organic farming. They don't have even know about organic farming, or there's a need to create awareness among the small
Dr.
landholders.
Masood, a lot of research suggests that organic farming is good for the environment as well. Can you elaborate upon that? How is this good for the environment? And since we're living in a time where climate change is a huge, dramatic effect on our well-being.
You see that when we are saying organic farming, so we are not using the pesticides. And when we are spraying the pesticide, our environments are contaminated with these pesticides, with these toxins, you can say that. And I think this is one of the main areas. I mean, if our air is polluted with the toxic compounds and the toxic chemicals, so it's how we can guarantee the good health of the community. Secondly, the fertilizers, when we are using a lot of fertilizers, when there is indiscriminate use of fertilizer, it also affects, because they are also inorganic in nature. So these are the main two parameters which are very considerate, particularly with special reference to the environmental pollution.
Dr. Farzeen, so this new generation that comes to you, and hear a lot about how the new generation is so much different than the previous generation who ate organic foods. What are some of the differences you see in terms of their health, in terms of their well-being, in terms of their body structures even?
Okay. First of all is the rise in obesity. A lot of people are gaining weight lot of students report to me that they eat less, yet the junk food is enough to cause the bad sort of a weight gain. There's rise in cholesterol, there's rise in blood pressure, there's a rise in diabetes. Now, a patient about 20 years ago, we would see a patient coming in with a heart attack or with diabetes at age 40 maybe, or 40 plus, but the age has sort of reversed when it comes to the younger generation. Almost everyone is suffering from vitamin D deficiency, which is one of the major causes of a lot of bone problems in the current generation. Also, I can see that there is also a lot of depression and also a lot of anxiety rampant in the newer generation, which is leading to a lot of mayhem in their educational institutions.
And our food and diets are responsible for
Definitely, most definitely. Our food and our diet, you are what you eat. So just imagine that, just experiment for a day, have really nice organic food for a day, and you'll see how much of well-being you have in your head that day. So it's of vital importance that we resort to the older ways of life. It's kind of unfortunate because Pakistan is an agricultural country, and the kind of farming we've had in the past was, sterling gold. But what has crept in the past few years has been pesticide, chemicals, a lot of hormones, a lot of stuff like that, which has played up with the health of the new generation as well as of the existing generation.
I think a small example is the refined sugar that everyone takes. And it's a great cause for depression. Like if you shift to shakar, say, or brown sugar or agave, there are a lot of, or honey, you will see a great change in your mood. It's a practice. You do it for a week and then you see. It's actually, it's a life-changing experience, what food can do to you.
Qasim, do you also agree that GMOs and all these other pesticides are in fact affecting our mental health as well?
That is a very tough question. It's a tough question because there is the scientific research to support the answers is very limited. So again, very important for scientific, validated research to be done on that question. Now again, there are conflicting reports. Then you will see that a lot of reports have sponsors. Now, for you to be able to do research, you require a lot of resources. Now, the kind of resources that large companies have is obviously a lot more than what a small farmer has or what a small food producer has. So you will see a massive variance or sort of a very large imbalance in scientific research regarding that question.
So Qasim, is
again,
this...
very tough for me as just a simple farmer to answer that.
So Qasim, can we say that this move towards an organic, healthy lifestyle is actually a fight between multinationals and small organic farmers such as yourself?
I wouldn't call it a fight because, conventional agriculture definitely has a role to play in any country, When we go back a little bit in our history and see the time when, yes, we had a drought type situation in South Asia. The father of the Green Revolution, Dr. Norman Borlaug, gets a Nobel Peace Prize, for saving so many people from starvation. But at the same time, the narrative has to include a balance. Now, the balance comes from, yes, you are producing a lot more, but also then take a look at diet-related health issues that have also arisen with around the same time that you have a very high increase in yields of food or in crops.
These multinationals could argue right along the lines of what you just stated, that there isn't enough credible information to associate health risks to the rise in products produced this way.
Well, you see, there are reports. There are reports. So there are there are long case studies of. Recently, there was one done in Europe where they studied. It was a large group of more than 50 people over an extended period of time, and they actually saw that eating organic food did make a very large difference in everything from psychological to physical health. So from that study, it was concluded that eating organic food does reduce your risk to cancer and diet-related disease.
Let's bring in Dr. Masood into this conversation too. Dr. Masood, can you tell us a little about credible information that's coming out and associating the deterioration of health to our feed?
Yeah, madam, this is, I just want to explore that basically diet is good, as well as on the other hand, if we are not taking the right diet, it is very injurious. For example, I mean, we are just, I think I just want to grab this opportunity because the people are watching this, that we are taking, most of the people are taking for fulfilling their calories, but they are not taking calories from the different food groups. We are mainly getting calories from the carbohydrate source. But I think this is not the right track. We have to take 55% or more or less calories from carbohydrate. We have to take at least 30% from fat and 15% from the proteins. And secondly, there is also some rules that we don't take too much saturated fats and trans fat, something like that. And when we are, I just endorsed the statement of my one of the colleagues that of course when we are using the organic products, we are I mean avoiding, or we are on the safer side against the carcinoma and things like that, because there is the addition of some xenobiotics. There is a foreign particles due to the use of pesticide spray and things like that in our food system, which leads to carcinoma in the later stage. And I think this is the best strategy, but at the same time we have to see that but we cannot fulfill the demands of the people with special reference to organic farming. But on the other hand, you can say that we can design a diet, our food, a diet in such a manner, maybe it's from the inorganic sources, but we can design, we call it as designer's food, in such a manner that it is healthy. We have to bring diversity in our diet.
Dr. Masood, since you're directly related with the research that goes on, can you tell us a little about trends that have emerged in the last 10 years, let's say, that point towards the fact that the pesticides used or inorganic farming is actually a health crisis?
You say in organic farming, pesticides are, madam, not used. Because this is the story that pesticides are not used in the organic farming. Organic farming, we are.
And does your research state explicitly that there are no pesticides used in organic farming?
Yep. This has proven that we are not using the pesticides and the foreign materials and the insecticides and the herbicides, as well as the fertilizers. All this stuff are not used. Just to keep the original quality of the product, it is of better quality, and I mean it gives a better sensory response or the hedonic response also.
Thank you for that, Dr. Masood. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue discussing this topic. Welcome back. So, Dr. Farzeen, are you seeing more stunted growth in children being born under these circumstances where we're eating unhealthy food?
Yes, definitely. There has been also, one, that there were healthier babies before. Two, I feel that the growing children are, yes, when it comes to the height and the weight issues, they are definitely there. And again, the way to treat them is to feed them the right diet, but we can't really find them off the market. So then we have to resort to the supplemental therapy, which is more like supplemental calcium, supplemental vitamin D, and other stuff like that.
Do these supplements have baggage of their own? Because they're also, are they artificial?
Well, anything that you're preserving, any chemical or anything, even if it's just fresh fruit, if you're just preserving it with something, that means that, yes, it wouldn't be the same, the plus side of it, right? So, but at the same time, I would say that if the real thing is not available, then supplemental therapy is the only resort that we have. And also, supplemental therapy is not the substitute to organic food or to have the healthy side of eating. So I would stress upon the fact that parents, like again, we talked about, I would come back to the same thing, the kitchen garden. Try to provide as much as you can for the kids, something which is more organic, more healthy, more coming more from your own garden rather than, is sprayed with pesticides. Yes, buying it off the market, yeah.
We're joined with Tawfiq Pasha, who's an organic farmer. Thank you for joining us. So one of the things we were talking about in terms of organic farming was sustainability. And that's what I want to ask you. So with our increasing population, is it even viable to go towards this option where we're producing less yields?
That is the biggest challenge. And I think that, I'm one of those who's probably promoted kitchen gardening and growing your own food at home more than anybody else in the country. But however, practically speaking, nobody can grow all their food at home. It's just a very small part of your food that you can grow at home. What needs is that we have to somehow go back to 100 years ago when everyone was eating safe food. So then how do you do it with this population which has grown 20 times over in the last 100 years? That is the biggest challenge. So I'm very optimistic that with times that are coming, with all the research that's going on, we may be able to have safe food grown under natural circumstances. So I hope for that time to come.
Mr. Pasha, but realistically speaking, I know you're being optimistic here. Can we expect the food growth to be such that it can, for example, cater to 220 million people living in Pakistan? And we're including not just people who can afford organic products, but people who are living on the streets, people who don't have access to supermarkets.
Look, I think some years ago, access to water, to clean drinking water, was added into the list of human rights, along with freedom and food. Now, food is a human right. It's a basic human right, and I think the word safe food to eat should probably be now inserted into that human right to food. So everybody has the right to eat safe food, and that is their basic human right. So the way things are, no, it's not possible to feed this 220 million population under any circumstances. And if we insist on it and we start banning things, I think we have a food security crisis on our hands. So, but I think that everybody, each and every individual needs to start working towards a time where we could revert to, we could be feeding this population safe food. So we all need to start working towards that. And I think
but isn't a large part of the debate, Mr. Pasha, revolving around what is safe food? Because I was talking to Qasim before, multinationals make their business off of this. Several food companies make their business off of this. How can we resist them? How can we say that, no, your food is unhealthy and organic farming is the only way to go?
Well, it's very obvious. Look, natural grown is natural grown. What nature has provided for us is better. If you are eating a cucumber where it has no flavor, you are eating a pear which has no flavor. It might look very nice. So all this, apart from increasing the yield, what we've done is that we've lost out on flavor and taste and stuff like that. We may have improved the look of our fruits and vegetables. And the yield, but it has deteriorated in
That's
in
something
quality.
that Dr. Farzeen also mentioned, that when you're going to a supermarket, try to reach out for those products that look a little more imperfect than the ones that look totally commercially produced.
Well, those are the ones that are perfect.
Quite a paradox there.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Farzeen, you mentioned how a detox and cleansing of the land is necessary. What about the human body? Before they start consuming organic products, is it necessary to detox yourself?
Well, there's, like you said, a lot of multinational companies are benefiting of advertising a lot of detox stuff and lot of detox supplements. I really don't support that part. I support a huge amount of water cleanse. I support breathing fresh air in the morning. I support not having junk food or sort of unhealthy food for about a week, and you're good to go. That's the detox that you require.
Itself, I think, is kind of a detox.
So what I was saying was that it's very important that a person then sticks to that sort of a lifestyle. When we indulge in healthy eating, then we stick to it.
Yeah.
And once that is done, then one individual can recognize themselves how it affects their everyday life.
So Nida, is it a lifestyle that needs to be adopted, and how much determination and how much effort is needed to invest into it?
There is actually no determination. There is actually no effort. Of course, you have to be determined that you have to, stay away from junk food and try to research on what you're buying from the market. And I think it's a kind of a detox in itself. When you start eating clean, you start feeling better. If you're, you come on the, you start losing weight if your body needs to, and you have to listen to your body. Like, a lot of people say they're off desserts or off, your body needs everything, and you have to listen to it and eat accordingly and not overstuff yourself with, with food that is not necessary for your body. And that the detox starts from there, I guess, yeah.
Dr. Farzeen, do you agree with that everything in balance and moderation is fine?
True. That's the norm since the day mankind came into being.
Just don't
Moderation is the name of the game. You need to be moderate in whatever you do, and even in, when it comes to drinking water, some people might indulge in a lot of water, A lot of my clients tell me we had like about 16 glasses of water. No, water is good, but try everything in moderation. And yes,
so can drinking more water actually harm you?
Yes, a lot of water can harm you as well, because there's a certain form of hemostasis and homeostasis going on in your body, which and that sort of imbalance creates havoc for the body sometimes.
Mr. Pasha, before we end the show, I'd like to ask you a little about, from the farmer's perspective, a thing called crop rotation. So with organic farming, it's seen that you can indulge in this a little more, since you're not going to be specifically dedicating your land to one sort of a crop. Can you tell us a little more about this?
Well, you can do crop rotation even if you're not doing organic farming. The idea is to leave the land fallow for a period of time. So again, if you start in today's world, if you're growing organically and you are even going to do crop rotation and giving it gaps in between, it takes the cost of your product high. So at this stage in time in life, growing organically is a little expensive. And the farmers' inputs do increase, the yields drop and the inputs increase. So we have to see this. I think, in the last 100 years, we have drifted very far away, specifically in these last 100 years, from the natural life that we used to lead. Balance, yes, eat in moderation, work out, exercise. We don't walk anymore. We've become couch potatoes. We sit on our laptops. I think the population explosion in Pakistan is something that really needs to be checked. We have to look at sustainability from all points of view. People keep talking about how it was 50 years ago in Pakistan. We had so much water per head. Water may have decreased a little bit, but not as much as the population has increased. So automatically, the water availability per head has decreased. So, population has been the biggest, I think, drawback in Pakistan in the kind of life we can offer people. There is a difference between the rural and the urban. There is a difference between the educated and the uneducated, the middle class, and there is the lower middle class. There's the lower financial classes.
Mr. Basha, we just have to
everybody's
end now,
lifestyle.
but I just like closing remarks. Seems like we have an agreement here that going green, going organic is the way to go. So, Mr.
That's
Pasha,
right.
do you also agree with that going organic is the way to go?
Absolutely, I don't doubt that in any way, and I have been promoting going organic, living a more sustainable life, about polythene bags, about everything else. And I think if you look at my life, it reflects that in every way. Everything that I've done is plant more trees, grow vegetables, stop using plastic, say no. I mean, I even fight against recycling. What I keep saying is, don't create that waste in the first place. So definitely we have to go back to how a natural life human beings used to live. And we have not affected only ourselves, but we've affected every other living being on this planet. And we are now running short. The Earth and this planet of ours has never been in such danger as it is today. And it's not going to be able to sustain it, and it will whack people out.
That is a very alarming situation. Dr. Farzeen, what would you give a message give out to all the people who are watching how to live a more healthy lifestyle?
Well, it's taking baby steps. You can't really, go into the big picture all of a sudden. So when you take baby steps, start from your own home. That's the way to do it.
Nida, do you agree with that?
Start from somewhere, yes. You can't be totally organic all of a sudden. So yeah, start from somewhere and you'll get somewhere.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Farzeen,
you.
Nida, Qasim Khan, Tawfiq Pasha, and Dr. Masood Butt. Hope you liked today's episode, and we hope to see you again tomorrow. Thank you.